Have you ever looked into Wim Hof?
Yeah, the breathing expert.
I
Wim
just
Hof is amazing, actually. This guy's done feats just by the way he maneuvers the oxygen in his body. I
exactly.
haven't done any more than with him than the 15-minute
The
exercise
15
that he has.
I
Yeah.
just, I
Yeah.
read his book and the course, and I actually wanted to talk to you about it maybe offline one day around what is in our tradition around dhikr. Like we must have access to all of these things in our tradition that Wim Hof, how he manipulates his breath. Because I've read about people, who've went, Muslims who've went to mountains in the ice cold and like sweat was, coming off their body. Like I believe we have in our tradition all of these things at Wim Hof. But what I was going to say is that even in the winter, if you manipulate your breath and do certain things and don't allow yourself to, you
Yeah.
can actually go for a run and without even needing a face mask.
Okay. So, with the Wim Hof method, one thing I do know for sure is that one of the reasons people feel tired in the day is because they don't breathe well at night.
Yeah.
If you don't breathe well at night, there's usually one or two reasons. Well, it's either the air is not circulating or your nose, your septum is deviated or something.
I mean, breath is such a fascinating subject. If you just read about the fact that most of us do not, everyone's shallow breathing all day. Like people are not breathing, they're not using the majority of the lung capacity.
Yeah.
And even in running, like breathing and running is so important. Like because you burn fat on the exhalation and so if you manipulate your breathing when you're running, you can lower your heart rate and go longer.
Hmm.
It's
If you
amazing.
breathe right.
If you breathe right, most people when they start running, they just instinctually, before they even need, they go,
Hmm.
you need to do that. And so, breathing from your nose, diaphragmatic breathing, um, it really does go a
Can
long way.
can you tell us, summarize for us what Wim Hof's theory is?
Oh, such a really, it's a big theory, and well, what I can summarize he believes through manipulation of breath, you can control what most people believe is uncontrollable. So, for example, he had himself in a controlled environment. He was injected with uh, it was a poison of some sort. And this poison, if you give it to a normal person, they go into anaphylactic shock and the body will start basically going like you lose control because you don't control that aspect of your autonomic nervous system. And so poison goes in, your body just, has a reaction that you cannot control. So his theory was through breath, he can control that reaction. He can basically
Mm,
tell, you, hey, relax, buddy, it's okay. Don't.
subhanallah.
And so he did. And so through controlling his breath, he basically signaled to his body, his parasympathetic nervous system, everything is fine. And that's how he's able to run a marathon in Everest, because the body wants to go into shock, and he's saying, "Hey, everything's okay," through breath work. Don't go into shock. Don't, no need to go to hypothermia. Just relax.
Hmm.
And so then people thought, okay, he must be a unicorn. Then he taught people how to do this thing.
Yeah.
He brought a bunch of people to Kilimanjaro wearing basically boxers, and then he had a bunch of people injected. So through the manipulation of breath, you can tell your body, "Hey, it's going to be okay." That's the theory of the Wim Hof method.
I remember listening or reading about something about tennis players
Yeah.
and how in tennis, you may have seen this too. Um, in tennis, they try to separate what is it that makes winners keep winning and people hit a wall at the tough moments. And everyone says stuff that it's all in their head, right? And tennis players, they get in their head more than anyone else because he's the only one on the court. Whereas a team, you can maybe just transfer some of the stress to another player. It's a team sport. So tennis is different in that regard. And it's also a moment. Unlike boxing, you're in the moment, right? But in tennis, there's a pause. And people get iced in that pause. And that's
Yeah.
where they separate winners from losers is in the pause. So, and they came upon ultimately the symptom of the stress of how they handle the stress is how they breathe.
SubhanAllah.
So they detected all of a sudden in the stressful moment, the loser is somebody who just he's just stopped breathing. He got tight, stop breathing. When you do that, your body gets tired and your mind can't think. But the guys who made it through those were the guys who kept breathing normally. And they said, like, what did you do at that point? Well, I started to think of, hold on, we can turn this around. So he had a positive thought, but the positive thought impacted the breathing. So now they took these losers and they said, all right, forget trying to control thoughts. That's hard. Why don't we just tell them to control breathing, right? So they went to the symptom and they found out a lot of players, all of a sudden, they're more successful in these pressure moments because they treated the symptom. So the root and the symptom may actually have an interaction. It's
Yeah.
not just thoughts that produce tight breathing or good breathing. It could be the opposite too.
Huh, I mean, it's amazing. Like, there's a sheikh here in Istanbul that's constantly, if like you listen to him, he's always saying, Ya Latif, Ya Latif. And and in that dhikr, he's exhaling a lot of oxygen. Well, it's basically like, like Wim Hof is a practice. Even running is a practice. Just
Hmm.
improve my running and get into this, runner's high in the zone and breathing and all this kind of stuff. And I don't take that mentality to Salah. Like Salah to me is not a practice,
Yeah.
practice that I'm trying to improve. And it's not, it's just something like, oh, in New Jersey, I grew up and we both grew up in New Jersey. It's something, and I went to Islamic school. I went to Ghazali. It's something you do so you don't go to hell. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, and a lot of that stuff continues into adulthood. And so
Yeah.
I always feel like, if I treat Salah the same way I treat like Wim Hof and study it in the same way I study breathing, can that open? I'm sure it can open infinitely more interesting and important doors than Wim Hof can. It's just not
Yeah.
something I.
Hmm. And also, I want to think about how dhikr without trying has to regulate breathing. That's why I think there has to be a physical as well as a spiritual and like a mental and a physical element. The mental is the meaning of what you're saying. The spiritual is what Allah has put in the blessing of saying these words. Simple as that. He put a blessing. If you say this, I send you blessings. That's it. Thirdly, must be physical because if I repeat La ilaha illallah without realizing within 5 minutes, I'm going to be less than that. Within 30 seconds, my breathing is regulated. Once
Yeah,
your breathing is regulated, all of a sudden the nervousness goes down,
yeah,
right? So there has to be a link. And it doesn't, and you don't need to do controlled breathing. You just say the right words